All right, guys, this is Michael and Marcus, and we're doing these lesson learned series. You've seen Randy do them in the past. He's usually up on the whiteboard, writing down notes, acting like a football coach. Because it's Marcus and I didn't want to get up there and...
We're going to use technology and type out things on the screen.
Exactly, and I don't know how to spell, so there's that. This hunt was a hunt that was a late rifle elk hunt. I drew it early in the year, so we had all year to look forward to it.
Glory tag.
Yeah, it was a glory tag.
It was like super low odds.
Very low odds.
We were all super pumped that he drew this tag.
Yeah, I think it was around 3%. Didn't know a whole lot about the unit, but again, it was a late rifle hunt. Knew we were going to be hunting sometime in December. It was a migratory hunt, so we're hoping that the elk are going to be pushing out of the mountains down into their winter grounds. And it wound up not really being a very long hunt, and there are some things that we did well, and then there were some things that we could have improved on. Well, I'll talk specifically about myself because I was the one who had the tag. Marcus was with me filming it and helping me out a lot.
Spoiler alert, the hunt was successful, and some of the lessons are what led us to be successful.
Yeah.
Not necessarily where we messed up, but it's like we learned that was a good thing to do.
The hunt is on YouTube, so check it out. And without further ado, we'll get kind of into what I think we did well. And the first point is something that you guys we do for all of our trips, and something I encourage everybody to do is prepping for the trip, gathering as much information as you can. For instance, like understanding season dates. Like we knew that this hunt was a December hunt, so we were able to think strategically, like what do those elk need? They need sanctuary, and ideally these elk are going to be migrating out of a mountain. So this is a huge unit in Idaho, and trying to figure out a good place to hunt is tough. But when you know that, for instance, it's in December,
right,
they're going to be migrating, or if they're not migrating, like where are the areas we're going to look at? So, like for example, tell me how you came up with your first spot, like the spot that we wound up killing in.
Yeah.
You know, what kind of made you think of that spot? And
well, yeah, so the first thing I didn't know anything about the unit, and so I think we both did the same thing where you log on, you look at maps, and you're just like looking at as many maps as you can of the area. The first realization is that there are roads everywhere. There were roads just gridding the landscape, and it was like almost impossible to get away from the roads. Mm-hmm. And naturally my mind just goes to, where are there not roads? And that's just what intrigues me.
Yeah.
And I think without realizing it, we were preparing for it to be a tough hunt. Because if everything had gone to plan and it had been like that glory tag that it was supposed to be, like none of that would have mattered. We would have just showed up and there would have been like, well, there's a big swath of elk tracks, let's go there, you know.
Exactly.
But by looking for those unroaded areas, we were like, without realizing it, preparing for this to be not the glory tag, preparing for it to be a tough hunt.
Yeah. The landscape, you would think of it as like a sagebrush unit. There's canyons. But what we were really anticipating and hoping for was elk herds of the thousands, bulls, running around. And when we got there, it just wasn't the case. So
people did say that if the weather's not there, that it's tough, that they're down in canyons.
Yeah.
In preparation, you look at the maps, you look at the canyons, where are there roadless areas?
Yeah.
Which is like almost non-existent.
Yeah,
here.
non-existent.
There wasn't really much for roadless. But.
Exactly. And another thing is just flat landscape. Pretty much just flat, the whole unit. Mm-hmm. There are a few steep draws and canyons that were really where we focused all of our attention to. Otherwise, there really wasn't too much difference in the habitat, it seemed like.
I think that's a good point, though, is that it's not only roadless areas. There were other factors. And, one thing that, on the maps, I did notice, some of these areas, some of the canyons, super rocky. And I'm like, yeah, that's looks gnarly and hard to get to, but I don't know if that's elk habitat. Yeah. And so that was, one of the things, too, that led to looking in those few different spots. It's there's terraces here, there's, grassy benches. There is water down in those drainages. Yeah. So it's obviously those elk are going to need food, water, and sanctuary. Yeah. And so that was another thing. And then it was when we actually got to the unit, realized how much crazier, like it even just like narrowed my mind down even more, because it was like, these places are crazy steep canyon walls. Like those elk aren't living on a lot of that canyon walls, because it's just too steep and there's just not even any food there.
Yeah, and so that kind of brings me to the second point of like something that we did well was we stuck with a plan. Originally we had wanted to get there, travel and get there and scout the same night. Things just happened that night. We weren't able to scout that night, but we knew that we wanted 2 full days of scouting before we really wanted to invest into an area. The first day we got there, the whole idea is like look for tracks. We're going to cover a ton of ground because we're going to take advantage of the roads. And once we weren't seeing tracks, it just kind of was like, whoa, you know.
It was very sobering.
Yes,
to like,
exactly.
To like drive around, and then like when you think like, oh man, all we got to do is there's roads everywhere. You drive around and cut tracks. We're gonna find a bunch of elk, and then to have it just be not that at all.
Yeah.
Not even close. It's just like there are no tracks.
Exactly.
And it snowed 2 days? It snowed 2 days before we got there. So it's like there had been enough time that if elk were there, they would move around a little bit. We should have seen tracks. And I mean, you could glass those canyon faces and look for tracks, and also just cutting tracks along the road too.
And the thing is, we did eventually find tracks that first night, but we did cover probably over 100 miles before getting to that spot and just like and finding those. So the tough decision after that night is like, what do? Do you stick to the plan and go scout? Like that was my plan, was to go scout that following day and looking completely different areas. Whereas I don't know if it was your tag, maybe you would have gone back to that area the night before.
No, I think I would have done something very similar. Like if it was me making the calls too, because you have a glory tag. And so it's like, okay, here's 3 elk tracks. We don't even know what these 3 elk are. Hopefully they're bulls. I mean, they look big, but it's just like, you know, you hear stories of thousands of elk on these flats, and it's like, you have your pick of bulls. It's like 3 elk. No, we want to go find that herd of 1,000. Like in our minds, they were still out there somewhere.
I think that, you know, sticking with the plan, just like kind of making sure that, you know, not freaking out too early, but
we covered our bases.
Yeah, like, we definitely covered our bases and really realized after that second day of full on scouting, covering a bunch of ground, not seeing tracks, that like, okay, well, this is the card that we were dealt.
So they had just been upping the tags for this unit over the last couple of years. And there was information online that said like the whole goal of this was to reduce numbers of elk in the area, reduce the pressure on those ranchers' allotments. There's tons of elk eating tons of grass, and so the goal was to reduce the elk. In hindsight, we should have given that more weight.
Yes.
You know, like, didn't realize how extreme it was. Like, if that was Idaho Game and Fish's goal, they did a really good job of displacing those elk off of those allotments, because there weren't any.
And that wasn't that implemented the year before this year, right?
Yeah, I want to say it'd been 2 years, and that was interesting too, because you could look at Go Hunt and you could see the success rates, and I think I don't remember how many permits they were giving out, substantially less permits 3 or 4 years ago. The last couple of years it went up, and then as the permits go up, harvest success goes down, which is kind of what they wanted. They're achieving their goal, but it's just like, I don't know, I feel like we probably should have given that more weight. We didn't give that enough weight in hindsight of like, that they're trying to move the elk out of this area. Like that's the goal. And so it was definitely happening. And we had come to terms with the fact that there were not thousands of elk on the flats. Like that was not the case. We determined that was for sure not happening. So knowing that like golden egg isn't actually out there, it's like, okay, now what do we do?
We were really only able to make a play on the information that we had from 2 nights prior, and we were able to go in, find tracks where we found them 2 nights before, find some resident elk instead of migrating elk out of the mountains, and go in there and kill them. So the last point is that we adapted and overcame, and that's a big thing. Like once we realized that like there is no massive herd of bulls running around, we just kind of stopped looking for it. You know, we realized that wasn't the case. It's not going to be a migration hunt. It's not going to be the glory tag that I signed up for, or that I drew the tag for. So we knew from the information, the best information we've seen in 2 days, that we need to go back to where those tracks were. Going back to the very first point of e-scouting, those tracks were in an area that Marcus had put a waypoint on like a month before the trip and said, we're probably going to kill one in here. And I kid you not.
It was the furthest point you could get from a road in the unit. And it wasn't that far. I mean, realistically, it was all uphill back to the truck. But, it was the furthest spot. It was the toughest spot to access in the scheme of things.
Yep. We know those tough spots to get to, steep canyons, places where people don't want to go, are usually where late season elk are going to hang out. And in this case, that's where they were. We just, the thing that really threw us for a loop for the longest time was, again, like trying to find the needle in the haystack, trying to find the resident elk rather than the migrators. I'm sure that this will happen to a lot of you guys when you draw one of these permits this year. You go there and you expect it to be something great. You do your 2 days of scouting, your 1 day of scouting or whatever. But once you have a good basis on what's going on, like, I think it's pretty important to adapt to the situation and figure out a way to be successful.
It wasn't ideal. I mean, it wasn't our first plan.
No.
It was definitely kind of on the back burner because it took us well over 2 hours to drive there each day and then back to camp.
Yeah.
So it was like a rough drive each morning and night to get out there.
Yeah.
But when it's not what you expect, especially with a tag like this, you have such high expectations and you think it's going to be so awesome. And then when it's not, it's easy to just like say, well, I'm going to just drive back and forth on this unit boundary waiting for the elk to cross. Like, I know they're over there in the they're still in the mountains, but I had it in my mind that there's going to be a huge herd cross this unit boundary. Yeah. You can sit there and drive back and forth, which is what we saw a lot of people doing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like, you know what? No, screw that. We're going to go in there. We're going to find them. There's got to be some elk in this unit somewhere. Yeah. We just need to figure out where they are. And that's what we did. We found them. I mean, we went to the only information we had and it worked out. Yeah.
Be interested to see what the success rate is this year.
Because they have mandatory reporting in Idaho.
Yeah.
So we'll know exactly what the success rate is here. Yeah. Another month or so.
Yeah. So obviously rewarded with a really nice bull. It was a heck of an experience, and I kind of want to dive into now some of the things that I think we could have done better. A lot of this is like if we weren't to have killed, if we weren't to have killed that bull, or if we would have gone into that area and not seen elk or whatever.
In hindsight, the information was there in front of us, like we talked about with the blogs and the forums and saying, if the weather's not there, and then also here the tag numbers keep going up, they're trying to displace elk from this area. So we knew that was the thing. So we should have been more mentally prepared for what we encountered.
Yeah, exactly. I guess the first thing that if I may have changed is because we knew we were going to hunt that area and it was such a far ways from camp every day. I think if we would have gone back in and saw those elk but just weren't able to get on them, and we were going to stay and invest our time in that area the rest of the time, I definitely would have thought about moving camp. And that's something that a lot of people are always wondering about is how close do you camp on those elk, for example. And in that case, I probably would have done something where we were 20 minutes away.
Yeah.
Rather than it took us 3 hours to get in there every day. And that's something that if you do that every day, I'm sure it would have it was wearing on us, but if we had to do that for 3 more days, whew.
Well, and it wasn't even just the fact that we had to drive that road. It's that if you do that enough times, you got to go back to town to get more gas.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you got to be prepared with a ton of gas cans, which we didn't have. We had 3, I think we had 15 extra gallons.
Yeah.
So even in our short amount of time there, we had to go to town to get gas.
Mm-hmm. And I think that just for morale and getting rest and being jacked to go hunting every day would have been a good move. Luckily, like I said, we went in there and killed him that day, but those are like the hard decisions to make because you're like once you get your like we had a wall tent on this camp,
right?
We had a 4-wheeler, we had everything set up, wood burning stove, and like making those decisions is kind of hard to do sometimes. But like had we not have been successful that day, it probably would have been smart to like go into town, get a bunch of gas, pack up our stuff, go there, and invest the rest of the hunt into that area.
We also had the luxury of it being like winter. Whereas, imagine if it was archery season with long days.
Yeah.
Like, we would have got, like, 3 hours of sleep each night. It would have been horrible.
Yeah. All right. And then kind of the other thing that I wish I would have done better, and I'm really grateful for editors and the great staff that we have here that polish our episodes up so well. But, like, we didn't capture it very well, but towards the end of like the day 2 and the first day really, I just like my attitude was not that great, and you know it was tough, and basically the point I'm getting at is like having a crappy attitude really doesn't do anything to help in the situation. Luckily, I had a very positive cameraman and hunting partner with you being there, but
it's hard. Like when expectations are here and then reality's here, it's just like it's so hard to maintain a positive attitude. Sometimes I feel like I just have to force it. Like dude, I'm having a miserable time. Yeah, this sucks. I'm like, let's go find him. Just say it out loud. You just have to like, I'm gonna be positive about this, even though in my mind, God, this sucks so much. Yeah.
And honestly, this may be kind of brutal, but like, I'd suggest like taking into consideration the people you hunt with, because like he helped me out a ton on this trip. And if I were to have another negative Nancy, there was times like on the second day of scouting where I was like, if we don't find elk tomorrow, we're going to leave and come back later in the season. And like stuff like that. And it's like, no, we're going to find, like Marty, no, we're going to find. I'd really consider you to like really think about who you go hunting with and the kind of hunting partner that works well with you. I was having a great time the whole time. There's nothing better than being out hunting. I wish I would have been a little bit more mentally stronger on mainly that second scouting day.
Well, I've been on the other side of it too, where I'm just like, I'm in a bad mood, and then this like Kara, like my wife, will call me out on it, be like, we're out here hunting, like we're out in the mountains, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to not be so negative, so definitely like call out your friends on it. Like if they're starting to be negative, just like, or you catch yourself doing it, like that's a personal goal of mine. Just like, gotta stay positive.
Yep.
Gotta stay positive. If you're just gonna be freaking wallowing around and pissed off, like that's not gonna get you anything.
Literally doesn't do anything for yourself or really anything for your team if you're like in a scenario where you're hunting with somebody else. But
for sure, it'll make or break a trip.
Yeah.
And if there's one like super negative person on a trip, it can just bring down the whole dynamic. Even if you have like 10 people and there's just one person who's just, oh man.
Yeah.
So that's like definitely strive to just be positive. I think it makes a huge difference.
Huge difference. Absolutely. So those are kind of the main things that I think we could have done better. Possibly moved camp, have a better attitude, and then done a little bit more researching on those, specifically like the thing that you said, like watching that success rate go down as they allocated more tags.
It'll be interesting to see if Game and Fish decides to change things up after this year. Like, I know I won't be putting in for that unit.
Yeah, no,
I mean, like, as amazing as the results were, like, the results were, like, incredible, but, like, I'd rather hunt general season in Montana than...
and you're...
Like, for sure, 100%.
The odds are is you're probably going to see more elk.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah.
But if there's one takeaway to have from this hunt is really just, like, stick with it and grind it out, no matter if you're on a limited entry glory tag or if you're hunting a general season, it's the only week you can go hunt. You know, we were able to be successful. You can still grind it out and still not be successful.
Oh, for sure.
But you're sure as heck not going to shoot them sitting on the couch. So
I don't think you'll ever like look back. Like even if we weren't successful, we wouldn't have like regretted how hard we tried.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you always regret not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
And so it's always like, no, I agree for sure.
Anywho, thanks for watching, guys. We're going to be doing more of these, a lot more with Randy. He's going to be doing a couple more. I think we're going to do one for your Alaska hunt.
Yep.
And hopefully enjoy them, and you can take these tips with you into the woods this fall and learn from our mistakes. And take care. Till next time.